TikTok versus Twitch,
legendary engineer calls out intern,
and racial diversity in the music industry.
You're listening to The Biztape. Welcome to episode 38 of The Biztape, your all things music, business, and media podcast. I'm your host, Colin, with my co-host, Joe. Joe, how are we?
I'm good.
Sorry for messing up the beginning, but here we are. They'll never see. I'll edit it out.
True that.
Wow, you really like that?
Yeah.
Joke, didn't you? Yeah, that was a good one. Man, good start. Restart now. Everything's cool. It's just hilarious. We got thrown off our groove because of video syncing stuff. It's always fun.
Yeah,
if you want to see the video, we got the Biztape podcast, YouTube, and then our socials have our beautiful face. And thankfully, it's at the Biztape instead of some random hodgepodge thing. Isn't that the worst?
It is the worst. I'm glad that we were able to grab that before anyone else could.
Yeah, thankfully we made up a word, and people also didn't make up a word. So,
yeah,
you know
I mean, I've talked to so many artists and stuff who've, whenever they pop off just a little bit, people immediately grab all of their potential names.
See, it's even worse if you have a unique, non-unique name, where your name is something like, my name's Colin Johnson. And you're like, no way. No way are you getting that. But, thankfully, if you want any advice from us, make up a word and you will have the easiest time with socials in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to talk about making up stuff, let's go to our first story, which I saw. It's a very little bitty story, but I thought it was really fun to talk about, especially with the world of credits and having your name on things in the music industry, which are super important for, a lot of people. You make your name from having your name on somebody else's album and all that kind of stuff.
That's how you get your next job.
Right. I mean, word of mouth, and then that's how you get your bragging points, is being like, I, was on this album. So let me talk about this story where this intern got called out. This is Chris Lord Alge, which you may have heard this guy's name before. He is one of the most famous mixing engineers in the industry. And he has so many high-profile credits that I can't even name them. There's Bruce Springsteen, Dancing in the Dark, and Born in the USA. He did Prince's Batman album. He did various songs with Carrie Underwood, Keith Urban, and Green Day, which he did Boulevard Broken Dreams.
Nice.
And American Idiot, which then with Green Day's music, he's won 4 Grammys. Wow. And then he has another Grammy with Steven Chapman. So this guy is big deal.
He's legit.
Yeah, he's got Waves plugins named after him, which if you're an audio engineer, you know what that is. But yeah, he is a big deal. He's just got it everywhere. And he does a lot of seminars and other various things like that. So when he started calling out his intern, I was really interested in what's going on. I found it on Facebook randomly. He called it out on his personal Facebook page, which I want to say is smaller than his,
Twitter.
His liked Facebook page, which I think has about 10K.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, clearly he wanted to tell people about it, but not so much oh, what's going on here. So he tweeted, or he Facebooked, I guess is the verb, on his personal Facebook, and said his former intern was basically stealing credits, which I thought was insanely interesting. He said, quote, "It seems that an intern I was trying to train at my studio is taking credit for engineering on all these records and saying he can mix CLA, which is his initials, Austin Seltzer. That's the guy's name. I spent a few months having him watch what Nick Carpin, my assistant at the time, and I were doing every day in the studio. He never assisted or engineered, which when I gave him a shot to assist, he didn't even show up and left town and left me hanging for no reason. He's showing my studio and displaying album covers as credits on his website of records he did nothing on.
Man.
This is a new low, all capitals. I am very upset and insulted. This person has no integrity."
Wow.
Right. With big claims from a very big person. And so I went and looked at the picture of it, and it's funny enough, his picture on the website, he took all of this down now, the bio's down, and it's just his name only now, and no picture or anything. and the positive reviews. I'm sure he got kind of review bombed, but they didn't say anything about it. But he was claiming basically all these credits on huge, big artists. He's saying, quote, worked on sessions for numerous major artists such as Green Day, Blink-182, Steven Tyler, and about 10 or more so. And then even named like specific albums that he worked on.
Yeah.
As well as mentioning Chris by name in the bio and saying he was trained by Chris and has trained me to be very quick and efficient.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, quick and efficient on that keyboard.
Chris doesn't seem to agree.
He does not agree. I mean, so now, like I was saying, the intern page is wiped. Chris's post is still up. So it's kind of like one of these weird things where it's a he said, she said situation. And, you know, everybody just kind of sides with Chris, obviously. But I've seen, and I think this would be interesting to talk about, a lot of discourse to Chris about posting about it, basically.
Yeah.
And a lot of people kind of going back and forth in his comments, just being like, why would you do this
to someone's career? Just
yeah. Why
out.
wouldn't you just like privately message them or do something like that? And he basically, I think he had one Facebook post basically saying like afterwards, like, no, like this is really legit. And he was doing all of this. But it was nothing like to the contrary of turning his opinion on the subject of posting it. So I thought, Joe, based on what I've told you, do you think this was maybe like a just thing for him to do or in his right to kind of go, again, personal Facebook page. There are a lot of people he's friended on there, but not the main big like 10,000 one that he has. But he did post it, and I saw it get shared around. So clearly, no notoriety here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he was trying to make it maybe a giant PSA to everybody, and it seemed to kind of turn into that. And I also think the legal implication of like posting on a business page is different than your personal page.
That is true. I mean, you might have. Yeah, I'm looking at the business
like,
page right now.
If he were to post that on his business page, he might, you know, he could have potentially gotten sued by the former intern for, you know, just like...
I think the verbiage is very important here.
I think it's
he
also,
says that he worked on. And that's like a fun thing in the industry that we can get into, especially with credits.
Yeah, because, I mean, people work on so many different aspects of projects in the music industry.
They work on so many different things, and it might be within his range to argue, oh, I worked on this, like... I was there, so I worked on it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, obviously if you talk to somebody and say, hey, I worked on an album, if you were like, oh, I was in the room, according to Chris, like I was in the room maybe, and maybe I like helped by like moving a microphone or like letting the band inside the studio. I don't think most people would go, oh yeah, you worked on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that would be like, that's a little of an exaggeration.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I mean, the thing that really bugs me, if this is all true, is the credits of like the way he was writing his bio. He was definitely trying to seem like one of the main engineers.
Yeah, he also mentions that he was mentored by a lot of other famous engineers, such as Dave Pensato, Andrew Shelps, all these really other big names. Mm-hmm. So it's like kind of strange. And then the one that caught me in here is he says he mixes over 1,000 tracks a year.
Which that's
I know mix engineers that can do that, but I don't know if he can do it. And it's
do you think anybody can do that at the beginning of their career?
Well, he's not at the beginning. He claims that he went and interned at Blackbird Studio. He worked for Christopher Algae, quote unquote, and worked on supposedly all of these albums. So, I mean, if he actually believes that, I mean, there are people I know that can do 1,000 tracks a year. Is it hell? Yes. Yeah. You're working on 365 days a year, at least 2 to 3 songs a day, and then they're done, which is weird, you know,
to think about.
Right.
That's like, are you getting what you're paying for?
Yeah, that's an insane amount. Even if you were in this page, he says he's a mixing and mastering specialist. So that would mean that he just mixes the songs probably. Mm-hmm. And so I could see if you were just a mixing engineer, you could get this high, but that's like an absurd number. That is like, you have to be a complete workhorse to hit that, you know, and again, 365 days a year, no holidays, no days off, you know, then you're maybe mixing 4 to 5 songs a day. and then
Yeah,
being
that
like,
just doesn't seem
right
possible to me.
there. I swear to God, there are people that I know that can do that, but it is insane. Also, Joe's looking on my laptop, but there's a picture of him in front of all this rack gear, and I've actually found the exact same photo on Chris Lord Alge's Facebook, or no, on his website of the same rack gear in the same way. And Joe, you can probably describe it. He's like, you would say he looks like he's sitting in front of his studio in the photo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like, look at me.
Yeah, he's like,
have
look at
all this
everything
impressive gear
behind me. Right.
Which, I mean, like, a lot of studio engineers aren't, mixing in their own studios. But
Right. And so that's the weird part about this, is because like technicality of a lot of this, it's like he's saying, I worked on, I'm in that photo more eliciting that like I work with engineering equipment or something.
yeah.
So like that's where it gets in this weird gray area where I feel like a lot of people tried to draw the line with Chris saying like, why didn't you just DM him? Because it seems like he's not completely going over bounds and being like, I was the mixing and mastering engineer. He said I worked on it, but who knows? That's the thing. It's a he said, she said. So like, I kind of want to open up to you, Joe, like credits. Do you think credits a lot of the time for people in the music industry, and obviously you can talk about from your videography and photography perspective, are kind of overblown, especially with entertainment in terms of like who gets a credit and stuff like that?
I think that there's a lot of people. I actually will say I have seen a lot of people getting snubbed in credits before.
Yeah.
Where they have worked on things.
Definitely.
And they were not credited. I have been in a couple of my jobs as well. But when you're starting out, sometimes when you are in those low totem pole positions,
There's no credit.
There's no credit for a lot of them.
Because it makes sense because, at the end of the day, credit has a line, and like whoever, writes the
if
credits
you're
is the
not
line.
directly implicating the finished product,
Right.
I think it's harder to argue for a credit.
Right. And
But
you could get as semantically as you want with credits.
yeah,
Which is
but
the problem.
I do think it's important because at the end of the day, people in the entertainment industry are,
Flexing.
credits, they're flexing. They have to flex a little bit, and they have to use, this is basically the music industry or the entertainment industry's
resume
is your portfolio and what you've worked on. And when you have like bigger productions and stuff that you're working on, and or bigger albums and stuff, even if you were the PA or the assistant engineer or something, I think it's important to credit those people.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's kind of what I want to say is like there are semantics to it in terms of like some people draw the line at credits way lower than others, and that can come from like role to role. We've seen that a lot. I think we talked about a couple episodes ago, like maybe like 10 episodes ago, about songwriting credits and how, if you look at modern songwriting credits now, it's bananas. There's like 15 writers sometimes on these huge songs.
Sometimes they put people in that they just think they took their song.
Right, exactly, because they don't want to get a lawsuit. So they go, hey, you're a writer on here, so you're established to publishing money. So there you go. You will not sue us now, and you don't have to pay your lawyer because you're going to get paid through us. So I think like that's an example I feel like sometimes of being very egregious, but I also think that specifically with writers, there's another incentive other than notoriety, which is directly money, because then you're a writer of a song, which then establishes you to publishing money, which is why it's so chaotic compared to other roles. Like if you go to a mixing engineer, like everybody knows like that's the mixing engineer. And then they'll have like an assistant or maybe like two assistants. And then they'll like, there's not really a big kerfuffle of like what's going on with that. You know what I mean? Everyone is always like, oh yeah, that's it. We're not going to, with songwriting, it's kind of up in the air. It's like, oh, I kind of gave you a verse. So,
If you're in the room.
Yeah. If you're in the room, then like you get a credit.
It also depends on the artist too. Some artists are more liberal about who they attach to the credit sheet.
Right. And then there's that. And then there's, what is creditable? Like sometimes there's some things that are like you'll get credited if you were a studio assistant, and they'll put you like on, because back in the day you have to remember, they would write out the credits on a album, and so whoever was writing the credits for the album had the say of who gets to be put on it, and a lot of times it's the marketing people, but also the artists would be like, oh yeah, I want
Yeah.
this person on there because they were a big deal, even though like it was like a little thing. But that's also where you get the fun ones where it's like he played tambourine on track 7, and yeah, I don't know. It's such a weird battle in the music industry.
It is, because it is kind of a gray area.
It's super important because like that's how you say like, oh hey, but like especially if you're going to be in the music industry or you currently are, you probably agree with this. There's a barometer with credits where it's like when someone says like I worked on it, like once you kind of work in the industry, you know how to like kind of suss out what they mean by certain things. So like, if they're like, oh, I worked on it, and you go, okay, what did you do? Did you do the production? And they're like, yeah. Were you like a producer or mix it? You go down that line. And then like, there's even more people, especially with, if you're looking for a, let's say you're looking for a producer and you heard this guy produced on there, they'll go as far as like, just like a regular job. They'll go get references and they'll go, was he really producing, or was it like kind of like, And
I'd argue references are more important than a credit. And I'd actually say in this circumstance, he's definitely not getting referenced.
Yeah, I would say that he's getting worse references for these credits.
Which is valued higher than the supposed credit that you have.
Right. And especially in like
this tier of a...
Yeah, in this industry, credits are so coveted. So like to, cause a heinous scene of credits, you know what I mean? To like literally call into question your goodwill is terrible. Like, obviously I hope that this is, I hope this guy's over exaggerating, or I hope that Chris Lord-Alge somehow did not know he worked on like 15 different albums. I doubt that.
Yeah.
But, we can't say it's a he said, she said situation. It's just the way it is now, So like,
well, and it shows the power of getting people on your side in the entertainment industry, because Chris's word is going to be held at a higher standard than, than the interns.
And like, if you want the example of that, go look up this guy's all music credits, and he's still doing big artists to this day. And the only reason that he's doing it is because he has the ability to have references and other credits. That's the proof of it. I mean, like, I'm looking at here, he was doing like, in the last year, he did Luke Combs a year ago or 2 years ago. He was doing a David Bowie. He's doing Pink a year ago. You see what I mean? So like, this is the power of having all these credits. And now this, I like to hope for optimism. I'm going to hope that this guy just was over exaggerating.
Yeah.
And just will realize his wrong and apologize maybe, and then he can move on with his life. But
well,
who knows?
You've worked with a lot of engineers, Colin, especially studio engineers. Would little beeps? Would you say that audio engineers kind of are? What is the vibe? I guess for something
depends
like
on what you're going. I think, like most things in life, the more technical you get, the more like kind of reserved of a person a lot of the time it is. In terms of like, if you get like to somebody who's like really, really, really technically minded, sometimes it can just be like, that's their whole brain. You know what I mean? They're not like super flashy or whatever. I know guys that can literally, they'll go in through an LA2A compressor and they'll know every circuit of it and they won't say a word to you and they'll be the nicest guy ever.
I have no idea what an LA2A circuit is.
Right, exactly. It's a giant compressor. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is like, a lot of these guys, want to be involved with music, in my opinion, with engineers, but they don't want to be front and center. They've chosen not to be front and center. So a lot of them are more reserved. The more you get to like the limelight is where you get like, like the middle ground between engineer and artist would be like producer. Those are usually more of like the upfront kind of like appearances kind of guy. These are all behind the scenes people.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is like their vibes can be all over the place in terms of like, who they are as a person and like how serious they take it, how serious they don't, because they're not in the limelight. They're not usually scrutinized outward. I mean, you're not going to see this. You're not going to see this giant on the front page of the news. Oh, look, Chris Lord-Alge. Some of y'all have no idea who that is, and I don't blame you. Like, that's what I'm saying. So it's like one of those things where it's a balancing act of personalities a lot of the time. And when you take these people who are behind the scenes and throw them out, sometimes they don't know how to handle it. And it's not a fault of their personality or anything. They're just not used to it. It's the same way that if you threw a baby band or a baby artist out there and they've never, talked in front of a crowd, they would probably have a rough time. It's the same way with this. If you're an artist and you've dealt with a lot of criticism before, yeah, I can rub that right off. But if you're like a mixing engineer, you've only done mixing and like you're not outwardly and you don't have like some giant educational program like Chris Lord-Alge where you're like literally in front of people all the time, you might not be able to handle this as correctly as somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Well, continuing on, content is king, Colin.
I really thought you were saying content is dead, and I was like,
No.
that's also another thing now.
Absolutely not. So I kind of want to open this up into more of I guess a contrasting element kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm
give
going to
me
talk
one.
about one of the biggest things in the music industry, in the entertainment industry as a whole, and that is TikTok. And we've talked about it for so long. I feel like we've talked about it every single episode at this point.
Well, TikTok's very important.
It is it is considered the most important app for music industry professionals because it is where everyone is at.
Right. It's like how the YouTube was in 2008. It's like how Vine was briefly in 2014.
It's the hottest new thing. So being valued at over $100 billion.
Nice.
TikTok has become ByteDance's most profitable application and has become a staple for any artist or brand trying to gather an audience fast. And although it's currently considered the Wild West, many brands have seen an incredible return on investment into the content space because of how many people, especially younger people, are using it. And not only using it, but clicking on links and going to where things are plugged and streaming your song. So now one of the things that I'd like to dive into is how this platform has essentially become what radio had been for decades. So both of our parents are like, our parents are older, right?
Right.
So they grew up in like the 70s.
Right.
At least my mom did. And she told me that like during the 70s, like everybody would be riding around in cars as a teenager or a young person or whatever, and they'd be blasting the radio. But it would be the same station a lot of the time. It would be the most popular radio station.
You have a rapport with that station. That's what y'all listen to.
Exactly. Everybody, and like you could sync it up. You could literally go to a Sonic or something, and like everybody would be just blasting the same thing. And since radio has kind of struggled to find its place in the new digital age, we haven't really seen anything that's like, this is where everyone's at. I mean, you could argue YouTube, but I think it wasn't as structured for music.
Honestly, the thing I would maybe argue is how hashtags work. That's the only thing I could argue because at the end of the day, it's about taste making.
Yeah.
Basically, hashtags were like kind of like how the radio was in terms of using it for taste making stuff and purposes. And I think you would probably argue early YouTube.
Yeah.
Would maybe be the closest that I've seen to the way TikTok works, and especially when it comes to curation.
Yeah, I guess so. I think YouTube isn't as powerful, I think, of a music tool as TikTok has been, because for a couple of reasons. I think, the takedown stuff on TikTok is essentially non-existent for music use.
Right.
So it is literally built into its platform.
I would say the reason why is because their music is built into the app itself as opposed to a user uploading music into the system foreignly.
Yeah.
Which causes it to see, from the system perspective, it's like, oh, this is music that TikTok has hopefully licensed correctly. So like I feel like that is the difference there, is the way the curation system tries to pick up on these copyright claims.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. But even if so YouTube, the way YouTube works with their takedowns, right? You have to upload. I mean, you have like the library thing that nobody fucking uses, but it's
right. You get some cool beats.
Yeah, I guess, but it's not as much that as it is. I feel like the culture shift has changed.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of musicians and a lot of artist teams have seen the power and growth that you can get with this promotion, because now you don't care about radio anymore. You care about getting your song viral on TikTok.
Right.
That is the goal. Because if you get, your song viral on TikTok, that means people will go directly from TikTok to whatever streaming platform they use. And then at that point, you get the label paid and then you get paid.
I think the most important thing about it, which I feel like Instagram was probably the first one that I really started noticing it with, is the ability to take your music and put it into different contextual situations. And so it didn't feel like a direct ad, but in essence, it's also an ad. So it's like, you're providing a soundtrack to whatever you're doing, as opposed to maybe back in the day, if you had a Facebook page or a Twitter, you would just send a song around and be like, oh, I'm sick of this song. I'm seeing it all the time because it's just the song. But at least like in TikTok, you have new content every time. So it's awesome because it's like, oh, I kind of like this song. And then it's like, but this entirely new thing's happening.
Yeah, and it allows audience participation too. Because a lot of like these viral TikToks aren't going to be the artist making it viral. It's going to be your fans. So it connects you even more.
You hope, you pray.
You pray.
Yeah.
But it connects you even more to your fans a lot of the time and people who definitely aren't going to be exposed to your music before. And although TikTok is highly curated based on your For You page, which is the front page that everyone gets a different For You page. It's curated to your tastes.
Supposedly?
Supposedly, yes. It's still, TikTok does an incredible job of discovery.
Right.
And I think it has done it a better job of that than like other platforms similar, such as Vine. Because, I mean, do you remember using Vine?
Vine was...
Did you ever use Vine?
Yeah, I did a little bit. And not a lot. But I remember the thing with Vine was you would find the same ones over and over.
Yeah.
And
it's very trendy. It's kind of like TikTok where it's like everyone hops on one trend, but it's not as like blown.
Well, Vine was like, and especially with like music stuff, obviously it suffered because it was 6 seconds. So how the heck are you going to do any music unless it's like you have some crazy music for 6 seconds? But the thing with like Vine compared to TikTok, which is why it works so well for music, in my opinion, is that the curation is so streamlined in the ways of trying to find what you personally like based on the only thing I can remember back in the day that had even close to it, in my opinion, was like early Pandora used to be like nuts to people because it was so good at figuring out like, oh, this band is kind of like this band. But TikTok somehow found that out with like unique content. Obviously they have ways of knowing it because it's like a song that's put with it or the hashtags, but its playlist of it is akin, like you're saying, to radio in the same way that a DJ has a certain taste and a certain kind of thing he likes for songs and stuff. TikTok knows what you like and does it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And then it gets you even deeper into the whole of it to where it's like you get even deeper into maybe the genre you like. And like you connect more with a community of people that like the same music that you do. And right. It kind of feeds into itself.
And it's not as it's
organic.
It's organic and naturally interconnected, as opposed to your example you were saying with your mother coming up. You have to physically go somewhere, or you have to be with somebody while the radio is on.
Yeah, and you have to listen to a DJ that might not have the same taste of music as you do.
Right.
And you kind of have to just deal with it, But that is kind of the positive side.
The gold standard right now.
On the contrast of that, there have been many struggles with Twitch content. And the thing I'm going to talk about right now, which if you don't want to deal with any sexual stuff or like in that kind of lane, then you can skip ahead. But we're going to be talking about how Twitch is currently struggling with a lot of what people are calling bathtub streamers or hot tub streamers or ASMR streamers at this point.
Right.
So this is a bit out of our usual programming, but the topic interests me a lot because of how it shows a clear disconnect between Twitch and its creators and how it's caused a general uproar in the community over what content, quote, belongs on Twitch. So, to paint the general picture, Twitch has fairly strict guidelines over adult suggestive content, as their guidelines state, quote, sexually suggestive content is prohibited on Twitch. Evaluations on the sexual suggestiveness of a behavior or activity are independent of user attire and are instead based on the overall surrounding framing and context. Now, the use of framing and context is very important in this case because Twitch is recognizing that in some contexts, it would be unreasonable to ban creators, such as if streamers were IRL streaming, in real life streaming. So they are on the street, maybe some streaker goes by in the back. They don't really deserve a ban for that because it's out of their control.
Well, the funny part is they'll still get a strike or whatever, and then they'll have to repeal it. But
well, see, and that's what I'm going to get into. So swimming or at a beach concert's another thing, or body art, or other exceptions depending on the intent of the streamed content. So as The Verge pointed out, quote, being intentionally sexy is against the rules. Being unintentionally sexy is not, and Twitch decides which is which. So, recently, two massive creators on the platform known for their hot tub streaming recently received temporary bans on what was listed as ASMR content. Both creators are now back on the platform, however.
Can you explain what you mean by hot tub content?
So, okay.
I'm first.
I researched.
Joe gave
research.
Joe gave like a very, like if you don't like sexual content, it's actually a lot tamer, especially if you've been on the internet.
It is absolutely
that we're talking
tame.
about.
It's honestly, if you've been on Instagram, you've seen more than Twitch.
So based on what this is, I'm assuming it has to deal with a hot tub and the contextuality of being in a hot tub.
Absolutely. So the thing is, as Twitch has gained in popularity, a lot of more adult catered content is coming to Twitch, which means that a lot of primarily women are coming on in bikinis, and they were actually running into an issue as if they were in lingerie, bikinis, like tight outfits, stuff like that was considered scandalous or considered too sexual, they would get bans and they would be out. Now, however, because Twitch regulates it based on its contextuality, they were able to get around it by
I hope that's a word,
getting a hot tub. Yeah, I hope it's a word as well. But they would just get a hot tub, and it's hilarious because these girls just like get hot tubs like in the middle of their house.
Right. and then they go, I'm in a hot tub, so I could wear a bikini.
Yeah, and then it's like just them in a bikini in a hot tub talking to their Twitch chat, right? It's honestly pretty tame. And the biggest streamer, Amaranth is the biggest one, actually has a lot of content outside of that as well, of like, interviewing people or doing interviews with other streamers and stuff. And a lot of it's more of like a talk show thing, but she definitely caters more towards like a male audience looking
right
for
people
adult
are coming
content.
to look for specifically that.
Exactly. That's what it's for. But now a lot of the Twitch community is in uproar over it because a lot of this content is actually just like flooding in to Twitch. And a lot of them are worried about if I'm losing viewership because of this, or are people able to find me? Because Twitch has struggled over the years with basically every genre of video to categorize it correctly.
I definitely think that, and also Twitch is very much not designed to contrast to TikTok for newer content. It is designed to kind of proliferate. Oh, this is, the bigger things in general. It's not designed for you to kind of like organically find some new streamer.
Yeah, you have to know exactly what you're looking for.
Right. It's if you were like browsing new, it would be so hard. It would literally just be like, I don't even know what this is. But in TikTok, it's so good at it compared to Twitch in that way.
Absolutely. So a lot of the gripes are coming from Twitch's lack of categorizing the sexually suggestive content, and they just seem to be putting a Band-Aid on the problem, such as when they just added the hot tubs category, which I think did help a lot, but it doesn't. A lot of streamers are still mad because to them it doesn't solve the issue.
Right.
To them, they see Twitch as like talk show, gaming, that kind of thing, and they're having a hard time seeing adult content and if it's able to even exist on Twitch. However, if we look at the stats on if adult content should exist on Twitch, you would be very surprised. Do you know how much Amaranth gets per stream average?
Viewership?
Yeah, in live viewership.
1 million. way too high. I was gonna say, I was like, wait,
that's like Super Bowl.
You were putting it up so high, and I was like, I need to know if it's somehow a million.
She has like, I believe, I want to say around 3 to 5 million subscribers, right?
Oh, or God.
Like, yeah, in that vein. But her average viewership is 17,000 per stream.
That's nuts.
And that is insane. That is crazy. And that's like, some videos go even higher, but if it's shown anything, it shows that Twitch and people on Twitch are looking for this content. So Colin, my question to you is, do you think this content should belong on Twitch? And I know that's like a hard, like we're two dudes talking about this.
Right. And First off, I support, like any person to do that kind of thing that is, risque or sexual content. Yeah. I think it has the right to exist. And I definitely believe that a lot of the criticism, especially towards these ladies, is fueled by just pure sexism in a lot of ways.
I agree.
I kind of want to go back to like how TV works, where, these people are especially complaining like, oh, they're going to steal our viewers. And I was like, yeah, if you're like Conan and, some other fucking talk show host is stealing your viewers, you don't think like that. You think, how can we make our thing better?
Yeah. How can we get people to
right.
come to our...
So that's how I would say it's like, I would challenge them to make their content more engaging or different in a way that they can't provide, and that's how you're going to do it. But in terms of Twitch, I would be, first off, you're the programming president of Twitch right now, you're crying, because it's definitely a weird predicament to be in, because the way the rules are written, it's technically correct, and everything, but at the same time, it's scary to think that will your advertiser, especially the more viewership that this content get, will some advertisers go, whoa, are you guys putting our ads on this thing? You know what, let's just be safe. I'm going to take all my ads out of here and stuff like that. And like, we've seen that. If you guys remember a couple of years ago, we had the YouTube adpocalypse, which was basically that, is that, YouTube was having problems with their ads coming up on videos that were extremely violent or sexually based in nature, and they caused a lot of advertisers to pull out.
And a lot of the weird stuff to that too was like a lot of those videos were targeted at children,
right?
Which was
even
insane.
Worse. So like they had to restructure the entire way their ad process even worked in that way. I'd be interested, if I was the programming at Twitch, if there was a way to, how diverse their advertising system is in terms of like control. Obviously, I wish it was as simple as like live TV is, where it's like, there's a guy who literally placed this ad here, who plans for this ad to be here, and this is when it's going to be. You know what I mean? But there's so much content infinitely on Twitch that there's no way to do that.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's going to come down to the automation of the ad system a lot, and kind of securing to those ad buyers and being like, hey, we have this really robust system and they're in their own category now. They got their hot tub. Your thing is not in hot tub category if you don't want to be associated with that, or if you don't want to be associated with other things. We have a robust system of tools to prevent that. And that's kind of what I hope would exist. I don't think cracking down on these hot tub streamers will amount to anything less than people just trying to find another way to scapegoat around it, and causing issues with your community, and basically being accused of, trying to censor a streaming platform that's supposed to be, open and free in that way. And so I honestly think that they're kind of on the right route of trying to delineate and basically be like, it's in this section of the website. And, obviously they have a line, and I feel like people agree that, the line is like, if you're doing overtly sexual things or you're completely naked, people understand that. But like the line that it's at right now seems to be comfortable. But again, if I'm Twitch, I can't control what my ad people think. You know what I mean? And
well, and to go off that too, I think a lot of businesses are worried about advertisers and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, advertisers have seen, they understand what Twitch is. I think there are some ads that might not. There's some businesses that might not want their ads on there, but there's some businesses that are fine with it as well.
I definitely think that
it's having that separation on the platform and categorizing it more and working with the community, which Twitch does not do.
It's going to come down to the ad tools, in my opinion. Like the ability
to scout out what you're putting
right, and
on.
to say like this stream is different from this stream and stuff like that. And obviously, I feel like we have to even go macro with this. Is that because this has been a bigger story going on with Twitch, and if you're like some random person on the street, you might just somebody might come up to you and be like, "Hey, did you hear all these like really like scandalous girls are in their hot tubs or whatever?" But the problem with that is that some people might take that out of context and be like, "Oh no, I don't want my child on Twitch." Or they might go, if you're an ad buyer, they're like, "We don't want our company associated with this company because they're being associated with scandalous content, so we don't want to associate it with it all." You know what I mean? So that's kind of the overreaction of it. I think Twitch needs to handle it middle of the road like they're doing, and just kind of be straightforward with it. And
well, I think they need to be more communicative. They need to be more community based.
They definitely need to be communicating with the creators, but I feel like they're afraid to lay out what the specific lines are.
Because they'll piss people off.
Well, they're going to piss people off with whatever. If they're like, okay, if you get out of the hot tub for like 2 seconds, then it's over. Like, that would be ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like there's got to be an internal memo or something where it's like, this is the line with the streaming, like if they do this with their body or something like that, and if like that kind of rules came out into the public, it would be so scandalous, because it would be like, why are you putting so much on this platform that's supposed to emphasize this kind of freedom of content, variety of content? Why are you putting so many small new rules and minutia to all this stuff? Like, you don't have the right to do that, even though they do because they're a private company, but like it would just end up in backlash in that way. So they have to navigate this like on a tightrope, basically. And I think what you're saying is right, is they definitely need to talk to the creators more, and I think come at the angle of like, we're trying to come up with the rules of this. And I think they need to come up more from like, I would like to know what the temporary ban, like, have they clarified anything about what the temporary bans were specifically for?
Yes. So what happened was Amaranth and another streamer started to do ASMR content, which kind of threw me back to that YouTube like weird video stuff, right?
Like this.
Yeah, it's really weird stuff. But the reason they got banned is because the noises that they were making essentially were deemed as intentionally sexual. And at that point, that's when they received the temporary ban, and they received it basically immediately with their new stream.
See, this is where I'm talking about. It's like you get to this point and there's clearly something went in the company, because obviously they were like, now this is going over the policy.
Yeah, and this was definitely a message to this is the boundary, I think. And they, the next day they were unbanned. It was very, very temporary, because at the end of the day, these women are bringing in insane viewership, and Twitch kind of enjoys that.
Right.
Twitch is all about getting people on their platform.
Yeah, and the subs especially. And so I think it's definitely going to be a weird fine line to walk with Twitch, but at the same time, especially comparing to, well, I will say this is kind of similar to TikTok, is TikTok does have also a history of like shadow banning people and having things just disappear and nobody knows why.
I feel like every social media does.
I was going to say, I think it comes with the trade.
Yeah.
And so like, I feel like TikTok has handled it a little better because, one, they haven't created a situation yet on their platform that is this like, one side of the line or not side of the line kind of thing. And they definitely, with TikTok especially, it's not, there's the top creators, but it's almost like sharing the wealth of viewership is a bigger deal on there. And so it unlike Twitch, where it's like you will see these hot tub streamers and they will be like, you click on the page, oh look, here's these 3 right here. You know what I mean? Like they're the top thing, they're the thing in your face. As opposed to TikTok, it's like I could be in a completely different world that Joe's in. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I feel like because the platform is different in that content creation, it's insane. Like the amount of lack of problems because of the way it works.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But Colin, pivoting from that.
Oh yeah, now we got to go to we started with a Crystal Radji thing, which is not as serious, and then we were like, let's go to like serious things about like, sexual, nature content, and then now we're on to racial diversity in the music industry.
Heck yeah.
I found this article or I found this basically this report, and it was amazing. So I wanted to talk about it. This comes from the Black Music Action Coalition, which was established last June and has officially released their first music industry action report card. And basically the group, quote, holds accountability and will keep track of the music industry's effort to clean up its own house, with some of the biggest across the industry graded on how they haven't promoted racial diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they tried to analytically take these companies, you listen to something, they're like, we've donated $60 million to this foundation. And they went, okay, did you actually like go through with it? Did you like, say what you wanted to do? Because a lot of these companies just throw shit out there, especially after the last 2 years we've had with civil rights and human rights up in the air.
Yeah.
It's like in a lot of people's minds. And so, they wanted to track of like, are you actually doing it or are you just saying it? So they rated a bunch of the big companies, big three, Sony, Universal, and Warner were there, and they got kind of a bigger breakdown. They got like different categories, which by the way, all our links are below and you can read it yourself. It's only about 37 pages, but it's like really nicely laid out with graphics and stuff. And they tell you why, oh, we think this is an A, we think this is a B, we think this is a C kind of thing. So you can understand. So in the big three, which are the biggest three record companies in the world, none of them scored an A in any category. It was rated from like A to D. So the highest grade was for Sony in the category of representation, execution, follow-up, and additional actions. And towards the bottom was Warner in the category of company representation, which Warner has no black executives at the company who report directly to the WMG chairman, Stephen Cooper, and none with ultimate authority and discretion at all. So you're seeing that lack of upper management for anyone who's basically not white. So on the promoter front, they also critiqued it, which I thought was very interesting. Live Nation, and for the lower companies that aren't as big as those three, they just kind of gave them a satisfactory or like you're kind of okay and unsatisfactory. So Live Nation, the biggest promoter in the world, actually got the highest grade as satisfactory. And it was for their efforts to institute change with a multi-point diversity plan and ultimate 2025 goal, plus Live Nation's urban launch of the Black Tour Directory featuring Black Tour professionals and companies, which that was awesome. I looked into that a little bit. And then funny enough, their second competitor, which is the second biggest promoter, and which would be the closest, even though they're not as close as most people think they are in market share, AEG, was rated the lowest grade of being unsatisfactory. And is basically because of lack of an effort. They, quote, said they are committed to working to bring about positive change in America, and then share links for donations to various social justice funds, but have not yet publicly announced any financial pledges or have yet presented any specific plans or initiatives related to social justice. Basically saying what I'm talking about, just throwing it into the air and going, we're doing it, and not really doing it other than
performative.
Tweeting. Right. So there are a lot more specifics that I'm going to leave you kind of like to look up yourself. But basically, if you want a really easy statistic to kind of show the importance of this, the Annenberg Inclusion Report, which also came around around the same time as this report, highlights a really important lack of representation, especially in the upper parts of the music industry. So Black artists make up 44% of the talent on the Billboard Hot 100 chart over the last 9 years. And yet less than 5% of CEOs, chairs, or presidents of major music companies are Black.
That's insane.
Isn't that like that jump between?
A huge disparity.
When 44% of the Hot 100 chart of the last 9 years is from, Black people. And then obviously, like, look, you don't even have any Black people in the top. How can you, represent these people at all without perspective and representation?
Yeah.
That's just insane. I mean, Are you surprised about this at all, or do you feel like?
I mean, I'm not surprised, unfortunately, because there is still a lot of old school things that happen in the music industry, and the music industry is very slow to change when it comes to its business practices. A lot of the time, it's really good about hopping onto trends, Colin, but
That's
really
what I was
bad
saying.
about the social.
It's really weird because in this industry specifically, we are so culturally focused and trying to be like ahead of everything and, the outward face and concerned about how we appear to everything. But it's like almost like this AEG example that they cited. It's like, are we just throwing out claims that we're going to do better and then have this, kind of statistic I just said here where there's nobody in the top part of these companies that has any representation? It seems,
Well, I mean, imagine being an artist, a black artist coming in, working with your label, and you have no one.
So that's also what I was going to add is it's interesting to me because I feel like with most companies, we think that the reason that they kind of, throw these, as you said, performative claims out there and then do nothing, it's because of public opinion. But I asked our Instagram people, again, I do polls all the time. I said, like, if you had a label who you didn't agree with, either values wise or what they're doing, would you stop supporting an artist you liked because the label is getting a cut of the money? And 100% of our viewers said no, they would still listen to the music. Yeah. So I think that's true. And I think there's, you're going to have to come to yourself if you think that's wrong or not. But like, it's one of those things where I don't think specifically for music companies, this is more of a outward facing thing. I think this is more incentives and kind of initiatives that are made towards their employees and the artists as opposed to consumers. Would you kind of agree with that as opposed to it being more of like an outward facing kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's internal.
Right.
It's 100% internal. And the thing is, the music industry knows that this is a blatant issue. And a lot of people are pushing it off. They don't want to change things. They don't want to shake the house up because that means people are going to have to innately leave. And in order to open positions up, or people are going to have to retire, or you have to create new positions. And with all of that and with change comes a lot of stress. And with stress, people don't like to deal with it.
No, not at all.
And so the music industry isn't as like flashy as people think it is. It is very much, the business side of it is very much like a typical office environment a lot of the time.
Right.
And when you get into those office environments, it has a lot of the same issues that many other offices have, which is just blatantly misregard for any kind of cultural difference.
As opposed to the good of the business. You know? So, yeah, I mean, and I honestly, that's what the, maybe detractors would say, but I would honestly say I feel like your artists would feel, a lot more comfortable if they had representation of, people who are from the same background or, and anything like that than, but as opposed to, oh, wow, we had to like hire somebody else and we had to like get that together for 2 minutes. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Going off what you said about having someone similar to your background, I think it's vastly important, especially if you're working with somebody, to be able to relate to them.
Right.
And to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes and attempt to work with them deeper than just, you're going to make me money.
Right, exactly. And if you don't have that perspective, or if you have, privilege and even as far as ignorance towards, the issues that your artists are dealing with, even on a social level down to, how people perceive them from their skin color, then it's like, how are you going to connect with these people? You know what I mean? Like, are you really going to...
You're not.
You know what I mean? And so like, that's the thing. And I think it's very indicative because like once you get, in my opinion, once you get to the really, really high levels of music companies, you get people who are like, they're very good at being executives, but they're not necessarily very good at being music executives, if that makes sense. If you see this a lot, you can go, obviously you'll have like a vice president or something and they made their way through the ranks. But if you get into like chairman and stuff like that, these are a lot of people that'll be like, oh yeah, the guy who used to run Walt Disney now runs this thing. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, they're entertainment companies, but it's not like a tomatoes thing. So it kind of shows like how, especially it just works for this boys club of it is, in terms of, oh, we don't care. We just need somebody who knows how to do this job, as opposed to let's get somebody who has perspective and understands where 44% of the chart, is coming from their background. And it's ridiculous to me in that way. But I definitely think that it's not going to come down to consumers in this issue for the music industry. It's going to come down to the artists and the employees if they push it. I don't think the consumer, sadly, does not care enough about it. But I also think that the reason that we're getting further in it is because of these employees and artists who are pushing the issue, saying like, hey, why is everybody here white? Like, why is there not like one non-white person here? Mm-hmm. I mean, we live in Nashville, so like we know,
yes,
as two white dudes, we know, But Joe, what have you been listening to?
Man, I have been kind of all over the place. You caught me off guard again.
No, it's okay.
I did it last time.
I had a high and a low with my music. It's kind of been weird. I was listening to, I'll give you the disappointing one. I listened to Van Weezer.
Oh, yeah, you told me
Yeah,
about this.
I was kind of depressed. I am not, okay, first off, if you're a Weezer fan, I'm not one of those people that's like Blue Album for life, Pinkerton for life. Those are the only two good albums. I like things of the Red Album. I even like parts of the Black Album. You know what I mean? Like all this kind of stuff. But I listened to this Van Weezer record, and usually with newer Weezer records, I can find like one or two songs that I like, and I just could not find it. And I was like, this music isn't even that bad. It's just like, I can't find anything. Mm-hmm. But then the thing I was like pleasantly surprised about was I, for some reason, listened to Smash Mouth's record, Astro Lounge. And I was like, this is the weirdest shit I've ever heard in my life. Because like, okay.
I can't believe you just said that.
I got bored. So I was listening to it, and it has everyone's favorite on it. Why am I blanking? The Shrek song. Yeah, it has All Star on it, but All Star is such a weird song in terms of the album. It comes out of nowhere in terms of like being like, it's super like happy and you're like with it. The rest of the album is like a fever dream, and you're just sitting there and you're like, why is Guy Fieri singing these weird verses about being smoked out and like all this kind of stuff? I definitely, if you want kind of, especially like the chords, it's not like, that regular 4-chord kind of stuff. It just gets really weird. If you want an example, listen to the first song of that album. It's called Who's There? And it's just got this like almost like porcupine tree-esque, like the rest of the album is, where it's just like,
I kind of understand what you're saying.
Yeah, well, if you know that band, you'll know what I mean, where it's like, we're going to throw this chord in, and then like the whole song's going to change for like 4 bars for some reason. Gotcha. So yeah, if you want like, I guess to show Smash Mouth's range, which I never thought I was going to say in my life, you could go listen to that, Astro Lounge.
Nice. I've been listening to Audrey Nuna's newest record. It's pretty good. I highly suggest checking it out. I've also been listening a lot to this guy called George Clanton, and he has an album called Slide. And I like the album cover so much because it's literally him just on a slide, like sliding down with some like graffiti lettering to the side. And that's an amazing record, as well as Small Black's Cheap Dreams. So a lot of stuff. I'm trying to get out of my normal rut.
I was going to say like the
music.
Spotify indie like hole.
Yeah, I mean, it's still definitely indie.
It's like, you like Mac DeMarco. Here you go.
Yeah,
Woo!
It's done. It's put a fat stamp on my head that just says indie boy. And then it just...
It's like, good luck with anything else. It's like,
yeah.
You like chorus guitars? Here you go. Woo!